About a year ago, I reviewed the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, which might be the last Note based off of various rumors. More recent rumors point to the S22 Ultra having a dedicated compartment for the S Pen. If that's the case, then the line between the S series and the Note series has now completely blurred, leaving those of us who want a top-end Samsung flagship without a dedicated compartment for an S Pen out to dry. Which makes me wonder, how does the S21 Ultra stand up a year after its release? Let's talk about it. This is InnerWhySo, and this is the S21 Ultra 1 year later. Samsung nailed the design of the Galaxy S21 Ultra. Visually, it's so cohesive, similar to the way that many modern iPhones are. I actually would argue that I like and prefer the design language of the S21 Ultra, mostly because of the way that the camera bumps curve into the frame of the phone, making it all kind of flow together. Then there's the color. While I typically don't opt for matte black phones, something about this is so dark and monolithic. It's so nice to have something so consistent across the entire phone. And it's nice also having a matte black finish that doesn't attract fingerprints too poorly. I really appreciate it. Now, in terms of ergonomic design, this has a similar size footprint relative to the Pixel 6 Pro, which you might remember I didn't like holding in my hand. But I will say that because this has larger edges, it's easier for me to grip onto, and so I don't feel like it's going to fly out of my hand every single time I wave my hand around. That's nice, and it means that this is closer to a one-handed phone despite its size than the Pixel 6 Pro was. If I could change one thing, I'd probably choose a more softer touch matte finish along the edges because it feels more comfortable in my hands, but that's a small gripe for me. Then, when you turn it over to the display of the phone, this has a significantly smaller curve along the edges than the Pixel 6 Pro, resulting in a generally better browsing experience. Now, Samsung obviously was the first to popularize the curved screen, but it's nice that they've since kind of tailed it off to more modern designs, having a very faint curve along the edges, still resulting in a smaller bezel size, but also resulting in less accidental touches along the edges of the device relative to older curved edge designs. I did mention in my Pixel 6 Pro review that most modern displays are pretty consistent, but coming back to this has been a treat. It's just so big, bright, and colorful that I think it beats still any other smartphone screen out there. One thing I realized while using the S21 Ultra is that the screen real estate just feels so much more usable than just about any other phone that I use. Yes, I love the massive real estate that I get from the Z Fold 3, but because of the odd aspect ratio, things fit to the screen a little bit differently, and the inconvenience in opening and closing that phone makes it a little bit more difficult than pulling just a massive screen out of your pocket with the S21 Ultra. That display is driven consistently at 120 Hz by the still good Snapdragon 888 processor. Now, of course, we're expecting new phones to have the newer Snapdragon chips, but it won't really make a difference in just about any performance. Save for maybe like very complex workloads, which I don't have a tendency to do on my phone, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between this and the newer chips. Even more important than the performance of the phone is the battery life for me, and even after a year of usage, I can still get 2 days out of this phone or up to 8 hours of screen on time, which is even better than my experience in the iPhone 13 Pro. Now, I love how much juice I can get out of this phone, to the extent where I have consistently used this to charge my other devices using the reverse wireless charging without having to worry whether I will run out of battery. I've used this to charge my AirPods, my Galaxy Watch, my iPhone, and several friends' iPhones as well, and I never have to worry about it losing its own battery itself. Now, obviously, this is not the best way to charge all those devices, but not having to worry about bringing a dedicated charger for various products is a nice thing to have. The fingerprint sensor on the S21 Ultra is still incredibly capable, being an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor that can log in very quickly. Ironically enough, the initial sentiment seemed to be relatively negative, but now that the Pixel 6 Pro is released, people are now looking back to the S21 Ultra as the best example of what an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor could be. Now, in my experience, this is faster than the Pixel 6 Pro, even with recent software updates to Pixel 6 Pro, but it's not a huge difference. it is consistent, which is a good thing, especially when it comes to these sort of fingerprint sensors. Now, the other place that Galaxy phones set themselves apart is in software. Obviously, people have feelings about Samsung software, but the general sentiment that I've seen is that it got better for quite a few years, only to kind of slowly get worse in the last year or so. The biggest attribution that I've seen people have for that is the fact that Samsung has been putting more ads in various first-party software. But personally, I haven't really seen enough to the point where it bothers me. And granted, I get this experience with just about every single phone that I use nowadays, including iPhones and Pixels. So any sort of small ads within software don't really bother me. Now, obviously, I stay away from a lot of Samsung first-party software, like the Galaxy Store, because I don't find it to be that much better, and most times worse, than the Google Play Store. The same goes for Samsung's Messages apps, their Dialer app, and most other proprietary Samsung apps on this phone. For the most part, I try and make this phone as Google focused as possible, but that doesn't quite get me to the point where this could replace the software on most Pixel devices. Now, granted, this has kind of changed in the last couple months as we've seen Android 12, which I'm still not the biggest fan of on Pixel devices. I still prefer using Pixel's software experience over the Galaxy S21 Ultras. And the biggest reason for that is something as stupid as a horizontal app drawer. I don't know how many times I have to ask for a horizontal app drawer before Samsung starts experimenting with it. I hope other people are out there asking for it because it seems like a lot better experience. The biggest frustration that I have while using the S21 Ultra is finding applications that aren't on my home screen because I have to swipe up, either have to tap in the top bar to search for them, or I have to find them somewhere in the alphabet. While I think I'm okay at the alphabet, anytime I'm browsing through the pages of the S21 Ultra, I feel like I've forgotten everything I learned in kindergarten. There's one more quick thing that I want to address, considering I had experience working at Google. While it might seem like Samsung and Google are competitors and they don't really work together that much, Samsung and Google often work very, very closely in partnerships. Because Samsung represents such a large portion of the Android ecosystem, Google is very concerned and focused on making sure that the Android operating system works really well on Samsung devices. And so anytime you see any initiative from Google and Samsung, it's really the workers between the two making sure that the experience gets better and better. This is especially the case with recent developments in foldables or anything along those lines. Just want to make that clear because sometimes it seems like, based off of various other media, that Samsung and Google are really on very, very opposite sides of the coin and just, yelling to each other through little paper cups that are connected by a little string. More recently, the Galaxy S21 Ultra has been upgraded to Android 12, which admittedly I haven't been able to fully explore, but I can say that there are some features that have come over from what the Pixel experience was like. This is great news. It means that now, before the end of last year, we had fully updated Android 12 on all Samsung flagships from last year. This, as far as I remember, has a lot better and faster cadence than in previous years where I've seen Galaxy updates come in even 2 or 3 months into the following year. That's a good sign for those of us who want consistent software updates. And it means that more and more of us will be able to opt for other manufacturers other than having to stick with the Pixel if you want the most consistent software updates. We'll have to see, obviously, if this continues in the future, but it's generally a good sign. Where I've enjoyed using the Galaxy S21 Ultra the most is in the camera experience. While I've generally loved Galaxies for their cameras in the past, and they always deliver the type of image that I'm looking for, I've kind of flopped back and forth between wanting it versus a Pixel because both can take great images. But the S21 Ultra seems to win this year in my experience. The biggest reason for this is in the ultra zoom lens, but we'll get to that in a second. First, let's talk about the other sensors. The primary sensor is incredible. Great pictures consistently, great colors, and you don't have to tweak things after the fact to get great amounts of saturation and brightness. Now, obviously, there are other great phones that were released last year, but In my experience, the Galaxy has a tendency to just have the right color scheme to make things more dramatic. So if I compare it side by side with my iPhone 13 Pro, you'll see that the Galaxy has a tendency to stray towards things that are a little bit more punchy and colorful, which I tend to prefer. Now against the Pixel 6 Pro, the competition becomes a little bit closer for me, but we'll see in the future whether the S21 Ultra will be able to step up its game in order to deliver some new experience. The other side of it is the video experience, which I admit I was able to take a lot better video with the S21 Ultra than prior Galaxy devices. This has a great video camera. Now, I can't think it's quite as good as the iPhone 13 Pro in terms of stabilization and how consistent the output comes, but I will say that I was able to shoot a lot better B-roll footage using this device than even the Pixel 6 Pro. Now, before we wrap this up, I want to ask whether anyone remembers the Galaxy S21 Plus, because while I reviewed the regular S21 and the Ultra, I never got the opportunity to see or experience the S21 Plus. I didn't see a lot of coverage on it, and I've never seen it in person, so I wonder whether these, middleman phones are really going to disappear in the future. For me, I'd rather make the decision between the entry-level flagship in the S21 that is easy to fit in one hand, or the fully premium all-out S21 Ultra, which has all the bells and whistles I'd be asking for. Now granted, that's a big price gap, so maybe some people can only afford a $999 phone in the S21 Plus. If you want me to dig up an S21 Plus when they are announced, please let me know down in the comments, because I'd love to cover the forgotten middle child. The last thing I'll talk about is the pricing. Now, Samsung notoriously went down in pricing with the S21 series, which was a good sign for the industry. The S21 Ultra had been only $1199, but that's still quite pricey for a lot of people, and I would really prefer it to be under $1,100, if not even cheaper. We'll see if the S21 series has another jump up in price considering the more recent, chip shortage. But in my experience, I never would pay $1,200 for this device because Samsung has the tendency to offer massive discounts for it just even a couple months afterwards. In a couple weeks, we'll see the promotions for the S22 Ultra series, but I'd say that if you want a premium Samsung flagship, this is still incredibly compelling and will last many years into the future and will still be great many years into the future. If I had to put a price tag on it, I'd say maybe $800 range is a reasonable price tag to get this a year after its release. We'll see what Samsung offers as far as trade-ins goes. But if you aren't one to need the newest, hottest version of every single phone, then maybe the S21 Ultra is the right phone for you. Thank you for watching No ISO. I hope you liked this review of the Galaxy S21 Ultra. If you did, let me know down in the comments, and be sure to like and get subscribed to catch more videos coming up soon, like the review of the Galaxy S22 series. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.